Emil Smith-Rowe bursting into the box, and that is a wonderful finish from Emil Smith-Rowe. It's his first goal in a Fulham shirt, certainly at Premier League level. It's the first of many, and look at the smile on his face. That's a quality goal from a quality player.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back going into the international break off the back of a superb performance against Man City, despite the scoreline, a 3-2 loss. But what a game that was. Not often that you leave the Etihad feeling actually fairly positive, and here to talk it all through, we have Sam. How are we going, Sammy?
I'm going good. It's a weird one, isn't it? Like, cause you would think a 3-2 loss would be kind of cause for concern or just a reason to be unhappy. But I'm actually very, very proud right now. I'm relatively content. I'm tired as always, a little bit dehydrated because I give the people what they want. And as always, I'm just very happy to be here. Happy to be here with my family. I'm happy to just enjoy. Let's get into it. I've been saying let's rock pretty recently, so let's rock some more.
Love it, Sammy. And Dad, how are we going tonight?
Good. I'm feeling. I'm actually tired, but I am very, very happy with Saturday's result, and I'm strangely proud of how disappointed I was that we didn't win. Who would have thought? But we deserved something out of the game. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a win or a draw, but anyway, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's a really weird feeling off the back of this game. I think similarly to when we previewed the game, we all were weirdly confident or weirdly positive, and the vibe actually followed through. It's always one of those things where you go into that game feeling positive and hopeful that something might happen, and luck is on our side. And often we review the game afterwards, and it's all pretty drab and a terrible performance, and we feel like idiots for feeling so positive in the first place. But off the back of this game, it really does feel different. The whole of Fulham Twitter, which is usually a very drab and negative place, is actually incredibly positive. And even though we were at times a little bit wasteful in the game, we actually are still feeling very happy with the performance, and we'll get into it. But before we do, as always, just a mention of the Discord, which you can find links to in our Twitter. You will find in the Discord transfer news, updates with analysis from Cottage Tactico and more, fantasy football information on the Fulham women's team, all sorts of general Fulham chat. It's a really good place to be. So do check out the Discord. You can join, like I said, using the link on our Twitter profile. You can also check out cravenpod.com for updated articles and information coming out there fairly regularly. But let's get into it. Sammy, you weren't with us for the preview of this game, but how are you feeling going into this one against City? It was always going to be a difficult game coming up against such a good side, but Fulham gave a very good account of themselves.
Yeah, I can't really say I was optimistic because I feel it's very silly to go into a game optimistic against City just because they're so strong. I'd hardly say I was confident, but I knew that we weren't necessarily going to embarrass ourselves, and we didn't. And I thought, considering the fact that Andreas, I thought, played excellent. We completely nullified Erling Haaland, which is impressive for any squad to do. And we'll cover it way more in depth, but all like the goals that scored, I heard a great bit of analysis about it. They said that they were basically very un-City goals, which meant that we basically just took them to their limit. So they had to stretch themselves and find new alternatives to get the job done. So I have an immense amount of just like appreciation for everything that's going on with us right now. And from the jump, I was just kind of like, we're in for a game. And yeah, Anderson. That I love that boy so much. I love that boy so much right now.
Well, the other thing that we were talking about in the pre-game is I think, Jack, that there's fair reason to be optimistic about this game. There was fair reason to be optimistic. Our form's been good, and we've shown really over the last 12 months that we can take on these big teams. And I was just begging for some really tactical changes that may have been only related to City and no one else, but just I was really wishing that Marco was going to try something different in the starting lineup to make something happen. And he did.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from this game is the fact that there were changes before the game and it was tactical ones, not injury-based ones, which is usually the way we see it. And, well, Dad, I'll throw to you, how big an impact do you think that actually had on the way we set up and the way Fulham played against City, seeing Sander Berge come in and Smith Rowe, who's arguably been one of our best players this season and is definitely our most talented player, being left out of the starting lineup?
I was surprised that Smith Rowe was not used because even though he definitely, as I know Skibby mentioned in some of the comments, which was impressive actually because he's on a stag weekend. I'm not even sure he was conscious at the time, but he did happen to mention that, I don't mind Smith Rowe not starting because he does tend to go missing. But he's a high quality player, and against a high quality side, you'd think you'd need him. So I was concerned when he was left out, honestly. Not surprised that Pereira continues to make the starting lineup because Marco backs the guy, and he just backs him relentlessly. I was calling for a possible resting of Lukic, but fair play to Silva. I think he's been so important and arguably our very best player across the 5 or 6 games leading up into this one. Impossible to drop. So it didn't surprise me that he started, but I thought he would kind of rest him in the hope that he would not get a yellow card and therefore be out and miss a game against Villa. Some people were talking about, is this a game where Mooney's comes in because he's possibly faster and more aggressive? There's no way that was going to happen. Raul has not only been in a very good role, I think it's too finely balanced. And I think Silva so desperately wants to give Raul the chance to really establish himself and turn his little purple patch into a real run of form. But what I really liked about it is that we went into the game really meaning to use Adama as a tactic. Obviously he didn't know exactly who was going to line up against Adama, but if he didn't have the right man, switch Adama, and he sort of completely used him as a tactical force. And I've got a lot to say about Adama in this game. People were pretty dark on him, and I was personally frustrated that he didn't execute on all his chances. But I'm going to argue that there's probably not a player in our side that would have even got himself into a position to have an opportunity to try and convert those.
Yeah. I really do feel for Adama though, because it was just that was the most Adama-ish performance I think I've seen in quite a while, because I really know him as just the guy who creates the chances and just doesn't necessarily get the end result. And I was gagging for him. I was gagging for him because it would have been amazing, and he did some really, really awesome stuff. That's the way you use Adama Traore. So I was really happy that at least he was just putting endless pressure on City, and he just gave Rico Lewis a serious time. And I really enjoyed that matchup, because basically Adama was just battering him, and that was just absolutely fantastic. And then because everyone was just so focused on Adama, it allowed Andreas to actually have probably the best game that he's had all season, for me at least anyway.
Yeah, I tweeted it about 15 minutes into the game, I think it was. Just saying the Adama versus Lewis matchup is how we win the game. And it really was. And I will give the credit to Skibby here, who did send through a couple of notes for us of things that he wanted mentioned. But the call from Marco to actually put Adama, switch wings for Adama and put him on Rico Lewis, who usually for City moves into a central position, was genius, because all of a sudden Rico Lewis had had problems straight away. We put the ball out to Adama as often as possible. Rico Lewis was being dragged left, right, and centre and just could not handle Adama at all. And it was exciting to see, because Adama was basically unmarked for at least the first half. They definitely changed it up in the second half and managed to shut him down a little more, but he was causing so much worry for the City defence in the first half, and he had a lot of chances. And look, he should have scored at least one, probably two. You do have to give some credit to Edison in the fact that he is a world-class keeper and made a good save with the first one-on-one. The second one, Adama maybe gets a little bit of a bobble and puts the ball over the bar, but again, he probably should do better. Third one, I think he's looking like he's trying to go through Edison's legs and just cooks it completely and puts it straight into Edison. But look, it's interesting seeing Pep Guardiola post-game obviously standing with Adama and giving him a few notes post-game. And I think from a bit of average lip reading, it looked like he said, mate, you are so much quicker than everyone on this field. Go around the keeper next time. And he really should, because if he takes one touch, he is past Edison, and there's no way Edison is getting even close to him. We saw how easily he outpaced Kyle Walker. It's such a shame that Adama couldn't put one of those away, because I think if we go 2-0 up in that game, it's a very, very different game. You see Diop probably come on a little bit earlier in the game and close it out. And I feel like 100%. We probably would have held on and taken away a point at least. As it was, we weren't able to. But let's talk about the first goal and actually focus on how good this was in terms of team play and in terms of the assist and the finish. Sammy, I'll throw to you first. Do you love Raul Jimenez now for what he pulled off?
I mean, like, love is a very, very strong word, but that assist was filthy. That was absolutely filthy. Like, I mean, props to the guy. He plays with kind of the reckless abandon, which I genuinely love. But there's a I can't remember the name of the guy, but it was a TED talk I saw years ago, and said it was to do anything creative, you have to be prepared to be wrong. And I feel like that just totally sums up the way Jimenez plays, because it's phenomenal when it comes off and he's fully confident. But I mean, no manager could ever justify telling somebody to do the things that Jimenez does sometimes. So I mean, it's totally high risk, high reward. But that's just pure instincts and just chaos, and it is incredible skill. That very few people in the world can do shit like that. And if nothing else, I'm just actually happy that Andreas was on the end of that, because he's had such a torrid time recently. And for me, it just completely reminds me that Andreas is an attacking midfield. He should be interchanging that spot with ESR, and I want him in that position more. I know that ESR is better, but for me last night, I was just kind of like, I just don't want to see him play anywhere else. And I get the justification behind why he's still in the squad and doing his thing, but he's just so much better in that position. He's just so much better, and yeah.
The point about Raul, though, it's kind of the definition of a luxury player, because fair play to the guy. He pulls that shit off all the time. He does that kind of stuff all the time, and it's infuriating when he doesn't score or it doesn't bring about an assist. And it's just gold, highly entertaining. I mean, intoxicating when it actually comes off. But so often, unfortunately, over the last couple of years, it hasn't. And when he plays like that, which, again, fair play to him, he always plays like this. When he plays like this and scores very few goals, you kind of want to slap him, because you want him to just stick to the basics and just put the ball in the back of the net or pass it to someone. But
That's not him.
it's no, and maybe it's just up to everyone else to step up and actually play, anticipating that he is going to play like that in the 6-yard box, or maybe even in the 18-yard box, and anticipate that if he gets the ball, he will try mercurial things.
As Skibby says on our comments on the live stream, with the amount of flicks that he actually tries, it's bound to come off when we least expect it. But at the same time, it's great having a player like that, because you do need those special moments to score against teams like Man City. And the interesting thing is we've actually got two strikers like that in Muniz and Jimenez, a couple of guys who often go for, overhead kicks, back heels, ridiculous attempts on goal. And I kind of love having those two players. It's great having a bog standard striker who runs hard and scores goals. But when you've got a couple of guys who can pull off the incredible, it keeps things exciting. And you do get moments like this against Man City where this thing that you've got Jimenez with his back to goal. Most players would maybe look for someone on the edge of the box, but he has the awareness to go for a cheeky back heel. And the fact that those guys on the training pitch are so used to him doing things like that, that Pereira is in the middle following it up. And it does catch Akanji off guard, who is trying to shield the ball.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Jack, because he's a very, very good player. He's a great player, and he was totally wrong-footed by that. Didn't pick it for a moment, and it's kind of the nutty genius and flair that you do need to break down the very best teams. You're right.
You can call it flair as well, but like I genuinely think more about it in terms of, if you think of a team like City, they're so methodical, they're so by the numbers, they're so well set in the way that they play that literally like a group of 10-year-olds could just manufacture that, because they literally have a template. So in order to break down that template, you just have to be unpredictable, because that's the only way. Because they're not training for that. They're not training for just absolute chaos. And to see it firsthand is just awesome. Just really, really cool.
And look, it was a great goal. It's not the first time we've gone ahead against Man City as well in recent years. And look, not long after that is the Adama chance, and that's the main miss. I think that's probably the one that hurts the most. Admittedly, the other misses were disappointing, but if Adama puts away that first one-on-one with Edison, it's 2-0 Fulham after, I think it was about 30 minutes. Fulham score 2 goals in 5 minutes, and all of a sudden Man City are on the back foot for the whole game. The game gets stretched because they have to push forward more. Adama gets in behind even more often, and I think things change. Unfortunately not, and Kovacic scores a very good goal. Unfortunately, a big deflection off Anderson to take it into the back of the net. Nothing Leno really could have done about that. And Man City equalise. Dad, I'll throw to you first. Do you think it was fair that Man City equalised at that point? It's not like they weren't in the game at any point.
Yeah, I don't think fair comes into it. If you've got that much individual brilliance and you're playing against that much of a force, chances are it's going to break. And I think the question is not so much, could Leno have done better? Absolutely could not have. Could Anderson have got out of the way of that? Absolutely could not have. He belted it. You could argue that he could have been closed down better and he shouldn't have had that much time and space. But fair play to him. He did well to get on the end of that. He did control it and actually smashed it. And
I'm not sure Leno actually gets to that, even if it doesn't get deflected. It looks like it was probably sneaking under him.
I really
hang on, to your point, Jack. I think it's fair. I think it's fair that they scored at that point. They were not exactly out of the game. We'd hardly had any possession. In fact, our goal was against the run of play.
I just really love the fact that we frustrated City so much to the point where they just went, like, we're not going to get a goal from Haaland today, so I'm just going to hoof it the first chance I get. Like, to get City into that position, that's just chef's kiss. And they had to do it 3 times. And even on Kovacic's first goal, Anderson still got to it. I mean, he deflected it, but he was still there. And the fact that, like, for all of their goals, they just basically had to just kind of just force anything in. Like, there's not that much structure behind what they were doing. They literally just got to the point where they were just kind of like, opportunity, go. And that is just such a testament to, like, the strength of our defense right now. It's proper intimidating. Anderson's incredible. He nullified Haaland all game, and I just loved it. Loved it.
To Jack's point, though, if Adama scores at that point, we go 2-0 up. Even the mercurial City, who come into every game with an opposition fearing them, but kind of accepting that they're going to probably get beaten, and they have that, they have that swag about them, which is very, very difficult to overcome. It's a massive psychological advantage. Look at what happened at the end of the game. I'm not trying to suggest we jump to the end of the game, but if we score then, City cannot ignore and just play the way they normally play through the game. They'd have to change tactics, and they would be somewhat dishevelled at that point, I think, and it would have been a different game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the point you guys made is a fair one as well. Haaland was completely out of the game, and as Claire says on our live stream, did Haaland even play? And honestly, for a player who's been so impressive this season, he's got 10 goals in the 6 games before he played against Fulham. He barely had a chance. I don't think he had a shot on goal. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I don't think he did. And to nullify a player of that quality, and look, the goals that they scored, 2 from Kovacic, where one was a massive deflection, another one, which we'll talk about it now, it's a lapse from Fulham, let's be honest. It's after half-time, probably 90 seconds after half-time, and Kovacic gets into the box. He takes a very good touch to gain some space for himself and then puts the ball in the back of the net. Fulham would be, I know Marco Silva would be furious with us allowing that goal because we really should be switched on at that point. But the fact is, the first goal was a big deflection. Doku's goal, which we will talk about as well, was a thunderbolt. And that's, the ball was moving around so much that Leno looked like he went the wrong way completely. It took something special from Man City, and we saw it when we played Liverpool last season as well, where it took some special goals to actually beat us. And that's the kind of team that we're becoming now, which is really positive, that teams have to do something incredibly special to actually get one over on us. That's big for us.
I must say as well, part of me, and I'm sure we'll probably discuss it a little bit more later, but part of me thinks if we started Reece Nelson, would this be a completely different story? Because, I mean, within 7 minutes of him coming on, ended up pushing an assist to Muniz, and his attacking threat is just, I understand Marco's conservative nature and the way in which he kind of brings players in, but I'm really itching, because part of me really just genuinely believes if he started, it could have been a very, very different game in that respect. Because I don't think Iwobi played bad. I definitely don't think he played bad. But I don't think he had as much attacking threat as Nelson did from the second he came on.
Well, I look back at how Adama was used last season, and I see Marco using Nelson in a similar ilk this year.
Yeah,
I think Iwobi had a good game. I think Nelson is definitely on his heels at the moment and pushing for a start. But remember too that Iwobi effectively played at right back for the whole game, or right wing back, if you will. But Nelson, I don't think would have been able to do that. And I think it was really important that Marco had Iwobi playing in that system, because Iwobi obviously knew how to drop deeper and play a little bit more defensively. And I think Iwobi actually did quite well defensively.
Oh, I think he did too. Yeah.
And I do agree, though. I think Nelson is exciting, but I also wonder if maybe we get the most out of him by just giving him that sort of 20 minutes at the end of a game in almost like a Duran style player that Villa have at the moment, where Nelson comes off the bench and he's starting to get assists, and maybe he'll start scoring some goals soon as well in the league. And I feel like we will get more out of him off the bench at the moment in a similar way that we got a lot from Adama off the bench last season.
While we're on the subject as well of like would you rathers, though, I do, because we haven't actually talked about it yet, but I do want to talk a bit about Sander Berge, just because when Kearney came on, I did notice a significant difference, because for me, maybe you guys have a different perspective on this, but for me, Sander Berge wasn't doing it for me for pretty much the entire time he played. I know he was there. I know he did some contribution, but for me, I was just like, anyone could be next to Lukic right now. And then when Kearney came on, completely different.
Dad?
I'm just
That was
trying
a big sigh.
Okay.
That was a very big
I'll
sigh.
happily take it.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I think Sander Berge, I think it's hard to judge them one after the other, because Tom Kearney came on when Fulham were 3-1 down. No, it wasn't 3-1 at that point. 2-1 down, and pushing the game on. Man City were actually sitting back a little bit, which you don't often see from Man City. But when we had possession, they really did try and get behind the ball, because I think they saw us as a bit of a threat. I think Sander Berge had a very good game. I think at the start, him and Lukic were both a little bit iffy, but they actually both settled into the game very well. I think as well, for the game we were playing against a team like Man City, you needed to have Sander Berge out there.
Can I ask a question though? Like, just talk to me like I'm Alfie. Like, just talk to me like I'm a child. What does a good Sander Berge game look like?
Easy.
Because I didn't really notice that. I wasn't able to see what he was doing that was good.
His passing was good. His physicality was good. His positioning was good. I think he actually, and he's a presence as well in the box, which is always helpful when you're having to defend corners, and when you're playing against players like Kovacic, who's a very physical.
Well, you got to
bodies like that.
Okay, no, Jack's back. Yep.
We lost you there for a
Sorry?
second.
Okay.
No, we lost you. Carry on.
No, I agree. Tom Kearney actually looked great coming off the bench, and it's very different though. We started with a defensive mindset of Lukic and Sander Berge, and I think they played well to start with. But when Kearney and Smith Rowe came on, it's just a very different style of football that we were going to be playing anyway. So it did look more attractive and look better. But Sander Berge, I thought was... I don't think anyone played poorly for the Fulham team. I definitely think Lukic started quite poorly, but he improved massively throughout the game. Dad, your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't... Lukic was probably the least effective he's been all season, for sure. But again, I don't want to judge the guy too harshly. I think oppositions let you play as well as they want you to play. But he seemed to be getting caught out, and he absolutely did not have it his own way. I'm thinking hard about how I really feel about Sander Berge's game. I think he certainly wasn't outstanding and didn't shine, but that doesn't have to be that doesn't necessarily have to be what you've got to be in midfield, in defensive midfield. I'm always looking for those killer passes that just break open a defense, and it's interesting. The reason why I sort of sighed when you asked me that question, because I was thinking hard about just the lineup that Marco went with, and I was still thinking about Nelson and whether he should have played. But given the way Marco wanted to release Adama, I think he had to play Iwobi, and he had to play him in that defensive wing-back position, right? Which means that, there's only 11 players in the end. I still want to see a whole game from Berge, and I don't think we're going to get a whole 90 minutes until possibly after the Villa game. And I think Marco will save him for that test when the opposition drops off. I mean, it's been pretty tough games we had, the last few weeks. And I think he is a limit to how much he's prepared to experiment with something that is still a little bit unclear and undefined.
Yeah, I think Skibby's right. Skibby's just said that Berger was just used for a physical presence and for set pieces before the game. No, that checks out to me.
It's interesting. Looking at the stats, I can see Lukic and Berger, obviously, Berger played half an hour less of the game, but Lukic had 63 passes for the game. Sander Berger only had 29, but they both had pretty much the same pass success percentage. Berger had far more clearances than Lukic. He had the most clearances of any midfielder for the game, similar number to Kenny Tete. And I think he was definitely there in a more defensive role. And I don't think you could have done that with Pereira or Tom Kenny basically playing
in
that 6 or that 8. I think it was definitely a defensive mindset. And as Colm says, who just joined in on our live stream, nice to see we found a plan B. And I fully agree with that. It's a really good comment because we often see with Marco a single plan and we stick to that plan. It was great to see us actually not necessarily try something different, but have a way to actually shut down Man City. And tactically this season, I think Marco has been spot on multiple times, and we're seeing that over and over again. And I'm really excited to see how this pans out across the rest of the season, because I really feel like when we come up against teams, Marco will always have a plan. And it's less now, let's get to 40 points. It's more, let's see if we can get a win in every single game. And it's exciting seeing us go away to City and
actually get a result. I feel like that's what Jack's saying. What do you think, Dad?
Well, no, I think he was about to say go to City and actually take them on and actually go there with a full plan to try and win the game.
Isn't that what I said?
That is exactly what I was saying. I'm going to have to do some heavy editing after this one. Let's talk about the Muniz goal. I don't think we need to talk about the Doku goal, apart from maybe Castagna could have done a little better and maybe not given Doku as much space, but it is a fabulous goal, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's one of the best goals I've ever seen.
Let's talk about the Muniz goal and how important that was. Again, really good play by Fulham, keeping the ball. I think it was Kearney to Smith Rowe to Reece Nelson, who finds Muniz in acres of space in the box. And it's a good finish on the turn. Dad, the importance of that goal for Muniz, who has struggled to score at the start of the season, been dropped and seen Jimenez hit really hot form, and now he comes back into the side and scores against Man City. How important?
Well, there were two things that I noticed about Muniz's goal. Number one, almost no celebration, because it was late in the game. We needed to get on with it. And there wasn't so much jubilation, but kind of a bit of relief on his face.
Oh,
and
I think I was going to say, sorry.
Yeah. And I which immediately made me think, I'm so happy he scored. I'm so happy for him. And that was pretty classy. He pivoted, he swiveled so quickly and put that away, and he smashed it. Really good goal. Very, very good goal. And he's been threatening, let's be honest, he's been threatening to do something like that all season. He just hasn't had the luck. And no, really, really happy for him. And, the worst thing in the world that could happen right now is, in fact, Raul goes on a run and scores a 10 or 15 goal season, which means Muniz doesn't start again at all. And that would be very, very damaging to his confidence. I think I'd like him to stay in the mix, and Silva and Muniz himself to really believe that he can continue to contribute. And if he gets the odd goal from coming on as a sub, that just keeps him primed and ready to go if, Raul gets an injury or it does dry up. So delighted for him.
It did feel very serendipitous as well. It did feel like, because there's almost kind of like a weird kind of like, what was that?
I triggered my Siri. I don't know how.
That's okay. I thought it was my mum for a sec. It sounded really similar. Oh yeah, there was something kind of serendipitous about it because, like, I mean, it just felt he's like, I'm just going to take my shot. I don't have any pressure. I'm playing City, and he got it. And then, just as you said, just like the look of calm, just kind of like on his face, that just felt it. It just felt very kind of like it felt very written in the stars that he would score in this kind of a game, and kind of like a low stakes moment. But I'm just really, really excited now for like the next couple of games because he's gotten that like weight off of his shoulder. It's a massive confidence boost to get a ball past Edison and Diaz and that. So I really want him to score more, and I feel that in these next couple of games, because it's muscle memory, it's confidence. There's so much that goes into it. Like the psychology behind it all is fascinating, but you just have to get one. And then from getting one, you can get two, and if you can get two, so on.
Yeah, look, I think it's incredibly important. That was his eighth appearance of the season, and he hadn't scored a goal up until that point. So, we saw it when he started last season as well. He really struggled when he was standing in, couldn't get on the score sheet, and then all of a sudden it clicked, and that first goal triggered a big run that saw him nominated for Player of the Month, similarly to how Jimenez has been nominated for Player of the Month as well. I think if we can have two strikers who are in that sort of that form, that ability to hit a kind of streak, it's really important. And I think it's just going to add competition. Jimenez has been scoring non-stop, and it kind of removes the competition in a way because he's not going to get dropped if he's starting games and scoring regularly. All of a sudden, Muniz comes off the bench and scores a goal. It definitely puts some pressure on Jimenez to continue to perform. Jimenez is going to go away on international duty, I assume, and hopefully get some more goals under his belt. Muniz will be back at Motswell Park working alongside players like Reece Nelson, Smith Rowe, Tom Kearney. He's going to be, working hard. And I feel like we're actually going to get a half-decent chance of, two strikers in decent form and be able to almost rotate them through the season. And maybe you get to a point where you do have a bunch of strikers available to be able to rotate non-stop throughout the season. And we start to find ourselves with options, which isn't something we've had for a while, let's be honest. When you've got Vinicius coming off the bench to replace Mitro, it was just not even a thing. But all of a sudden, we might have two strikers on a similar level in similar form, and I think that's really important. Let's talk about just the result in general. It's a big one, and admittedly, it's another loss, and it extends the run of losses against Man City, which stretches back now for 13 years. Man City have to come to the Cottage later in the season. Do you feel this is going to be our biggest opportunity to actually get a win against Man City? And do you think there's going to be some tactical changes from both sides going into that game?
Do you reckon?
You go, Dad. You go.
Well, do you think Adama's going to have some private coaching from Pep before that game? Well, yeah, just back to wrapping up this one. One of the things that was quite heavily discussed in the Discord channel was some negativity towards Anderson in that his passing, his sort of past completion success, if you like, was down on what it normally is. And I think that's really quite harsh because he had a very, very tough game, very tough one-on-one game with Haaland, who, Anderson was marking Haaland closely, and Haaland was pressing Anderson really hard because they know they'd done their homework, obviously, and knew that Anderson was our most effective outlet. And so Haaland was just shutting him down so quickly all the time, and Anderson had a lot less time on the ball, ergo, some of that stuff. So it was actually an incredibly good tactical tussle and some pretty good thinking from both managers. Obviously, Pep Guardiola has so many more resources and so many more tricks he can pull. Marco, no doubt, could come up with some three or four very, very interesting tactics or strategies, but he just doesn't have the depth of quality to pull it off. I mean, who's got Doku off the bench to go come on and do something like that? So yeah, I mean, Paul, I think I'm very optimistic that we can get a result next time at the Cottage against City. I know it sounds like a pipe dream, but I think, you know, I in the run up to this game, I was saying my concern was they're probably going to score 3, so we'd have to score at least 3. And I didn't honestly think that we were even going to get close to score 3 because we just haven't been scoring enough goals. So for us to even get 2 away at the Etihad is incredible. Really.
I really like the image of Adama Traore just messaging Pep Guardiola you up before like the next time he plays like Liverpool or somewhere else. I think that's a very entertaining concept. In terms of like this actual game and just how I feel about it. Oh, sorry, actually, just in terms of like, are we approaching a win against City? If I'm going to speak honestly, I don't think so. But with that being said, it does feel like we are slowly chipping away at them. I feel that I can't see it this season. If I'm going to be really, really honest, I can't see it this season. I would love to be as optimistic as Dad. But you know what? Next season, depending on the signings we do, depending on if we still have Silva, and depending on if our main focus is the league and we're not burdened by something like European football, as awesome as that would be, I could see us potentially causing an upset and just doing some giant killing next season. I think this season we still got a couple of kinks that we need to work out. But, I mean, do I think we'll give them a seriously good game and it will be incredibly contested and we'll go away very, very happy? Hell yeah.
Well, I mean, the one thing to consider, as Skibby sort of mentioned, is the fact that we do play Man City on the last day of the season. If the league's wrapped up, there is an opportunity there for Man City to rest a few players and, you know, make sure a couple of guys get medals because they came off the bench a few times during the season and they need another appearance. It's possible that it's a chance for us to actually win the game. But look, I don't even want to win against Man City. I just want us to get a draw against them almost, just to break the back of that run of losses, because I genuinely think we deserve it. Last season, we were... admittedly, we conceded 9 goals against them last season, but I think we were a little unlucky. There was the goal that was allowed for, despite Leno obviously being obstructed, and it all just fell to pieces after that. And then they were just too good for us at the Cottage as well. Let's be honest, but it does feel like it's creeping closer, as you said, Sammy. And I reckon the end of the season could be half a chance for us. I think Marco. I'm not saying he's figured out Man City and figured out Pep, because that's unrealistic, but he's definitely worked a way to get the most out of this Fulham team, and I think it seems like he's very happy with his squad at the moment, which is a really good place to be in, because he's got options. He's got the ability to change things up by dropping our best player for a new signing. It's not something you've seen previously. You wouldn't expect Marco last season to drop Palhinha for tactical reasons.
Yeah,
it would just never happen. But now we're in a position where we can leave Smith Rowe out of the team because tactically we've got a different plan, and I think that's a really positive position to be in. Guys, we're going into an international break now. Do you think it's a good time to be going into the break off the back of a performance like that, or do you feel like we maybe might lose a little bit of momentum that we could have taken into Villa?
I'd love to be playing Villa this Saturday, honestly. You got to be thinking that the guys would have come away from Manchester being pretty pleased with themselves, really. You know, that was a massive effort to score 2 goals and push them. And we've kind of glossed over this, but City were not cruising by the end. They were... I wouldn't call it shithousery, but there was a lot of game management going on, and it was a bit embarrassing that against little old Fulham they had to throw balls on the pitch, and, waste time kicking off and doing all kinds of pretty blatant stuff, really. So huge compliment to us. So yeah, I really would like to be taking Villa on right now.
Is Sanderberg is he getting an international call up or not necessarily?
He usually does. To be honest, haven't had a proper look at the international call-ups for this
That's okay.
this run of games, because I just don't want this run of games to happen. I hate these international breaks, and the fact that we've got another one in November as well is just infuriating. But I'd assume the majority of our squad will not be there. Lukic has definitely been called up. I reckon Berger's probably been called up. Anderson, Bassi, Iwobi probably all get call-ups. Kenny Tete should be getting called up, even though he probably won't be. But Castagna and Robinson, I assume, both will be.
Yeah.
Leno may be getting a call-up as well after Neuer announced his retirement. So there's not going to be a huge number of players around, I don't think. But it's more just the momentum that we lose. I think off the back of a performance like that, the spirits would be incredibly high, because it's weird to lose, but it feels almost like a win. So I agree. I'd love to be playing Villa this weekend. It's a real shame that we're going into the break now, but maybe having pushed ourselves so hard in the game against Man City, it is good to have a little bit of a break.
The one person that I think could really benefit from being at Motspur Park for 2 more weeks would actually be Berger. And he's not going to be.
Thinking. Yeah, I mean, you can make a case for like Nelson as well. Just kind of in general, just to kind of like familiarize himself more, because he's been so great. But the more time he spends with Marco, the better. And same with ESR as well.
But he's proved himself. I mean, he's proved himself. I think that Marco's seen enough of Nelson that I don't think he needs to see more. I think just tactically, he prefers to start Iwobi at the moment, and he's not changing Adama. Wilson's not getting a start. No way. So yeah, I think these international breaks, if they ever suited anyone, they're not suiting us at all for any number of reasons. They're not convenient at all.
Yeah, no, it doesn't feel like it at the moment.
And Matt, I'm quite fond of a Stilton, because you just got to give the people what they want.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be weird for people who aren't on the YouTube live. But yeah,
why aren't you on the YouTube live? Why aren't you watching this live, guys? Come on.
Let's have a quick look at the stats from the game just to wrap it up. Man City with 58% possession. Fulham with a very respectable 42%, I have to say. I was expecting that number to be in the 20s. To have 42% against Man City is a very good effort. Man City with 20 shots to Fulham's 11, 7 on target for City to Fulham's 4. Passes, Fulham actually managed 452. I think last time we played City, we only had about 200. City, though, with 634 passes. City with 8 corners to Fulham's 3. Fulham with 10 fouls to Man City's 4. A couple of very good professional fouls from Fulham, which I really enjoy seeing at the moment, because we definitely missed out on points by not making some professional fouls earlier this season. So I think it was Bassi who put his arms around Phil Foden's waist at one point during a quick break. Really, really good to see. A quick look at the table as it stands. Fulham, after 7 games, sitting in 8th place, a goal difference of +2, 11 points so far, sitting just 1 point behind Brighton and Newcastle, who sit in 6th and 7th. Only 3 points off 4th place at the moment. Admittedly, Chelsea with a much better goal difference, but sitting pretty ahead of Spurs, ahead of West Ham, Brentford, Man United. It's a really good start to the season, and look, a decent result against Villa. And I will go back to a question posed, I think it was by Claire earlier in the chat. We do have Villa coming up next, and then Everton the game after. How many points do you think we're getting from those 2 games? Sam, I'll throw to you first.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. I was distracted by the chat. Can you ask me the question one more time?
What points do we get from the upcoming games against Villa and Everton after the international break?
Oh, Villa's a really hard one. Not as actually in I feel like they're a difficult team. I actually think that they're a very attainable team to like play against, especially at the moment, given their recent form. I think Villa's going to be a really annoying one. I think as I feel that we should get a 2-1 or a 1-0. I think it's going to end up being 1-1, which would be really annoying. But I feel like that's just what's going to happen. Everton, that should be 2-0. That should probably. I mean, you could maybe even make a case for 3-0 or at least 3-1. But yeah, I'm going to go 1-1 Villa. Yeah. I'm going to go 1-1 Villa, and 4 points. 4 points.
Dad?
I'm going 6 points. I think it's possible, not just because I really, really, really want 6 points. I actually think it's achievable. I know they had they've been up and down, because I saw what happened against Ipswich, and they looked very beatable. And I know Ipswich are a handful at home, but I feel like they've just got the better of us, particularly in the middle of the park. The last couple of times we played them, and out on the wings. But I think we can beat them at home.
They also have a few issues at the moment, Villa. They've current injuries. John McGinn is out. Amadou Onana, Jacob
dick
Ramsey,
who normally hurts us.
Tyrone Mings, Eric Konza had to be subbed off in the last game with a potential hamstring injury. Boubacar Kamara out as well. There's some pretty key players from that Villa side. If you're looking at those, there's like 4 to potentially even 6 starting players who are unavailable for Villa. So off the back of an international break as well, where a lot of their players will be going away on international duty, there is a possibility of us sneaking a result against Villa. I agree with Sam. I think a draw is a minimum there. I think we should probably be looking at a win. And then, interestingly, after that, we're talking about just the upcoming 2 games, but after Everton, I believe we played Brentford, Palace and Wolves, who are all, not having the greatest seasons at the moment. Admittedly, Brentford had a good win on the weekend, but apart from scoring in the first minute of games, they haven't been great this season. So if we get a win against Villa, there is a potential for us to actually have a really good run of 5 games and potentially get 5 wins from those games. So all of a sudden, you look at that, 5 wins, it takes us to 26 points from 13 games, and we're absolutely flying at that point. And, Europe becomes not just a possibility, but something that we really should be aiming to secure early doors. And I think we'll have to wait and see, because it is very Fulhamish to actually drop points in that little run of games. But at the moment, it's looking good, and I think it's exciting for us. Guys, let's move on and talk about Fulham Women's. There's been not much action, unfortunately, for the women's team in the league for a couple of weeks now, but we played against Sporting London Benfica on Sunday, a team who were recently promoted and have actually given a fair account of themselves so far, with a couple of wins, a draw and a couple of losses when they came into this game. Fulham had only managed to play 3 games, where some teams had played 7 so far this season, and had been completely unbeaten, 100% record. Going into this game, though, reports from the game is that Sporting London held a very low block, sat on the edge of the box, and it was tough to break down this team, despite Fulham obviously having more quality. Sophie Manzi scored just after half-time to make it 1-0. Benfica equalised after 60 minutes, and Fulham had close to 30 shots on goal for the game, couldn't get the breakthrough until the 8th minute of injury time, when Kat Beaver scored from a corner to give Fulham a win, keep the 100% record up this season, and push Fulham to 3rd in the league. 3rd maybe doesn't tell the full picture, as Fulham have played 4 games and have 12 points. The team top at the moment are Dorking Wanderers, who've played 7 games and sit just 4 points ahead of us. So a win in Fulham's next game, and in fact winning all the games in hand, puts us comfortably on top of the league. Dad and Sam, how hard do you think it is for Fulham, who have had a bit of a disjointed start to the season, not managing to actually play as many games as the teams around them in the league. Do you think that's going to have a negative effect on the team through the rest of the season?
Well, yeah. I mean, the reason you're not telling the full story, because that's obviously a very weird, uneven position for us to have only played 4 games.
For a bit of context, I guess there is the ability for opposition teams to effectively postpone their games. Each team gets one postponement through the season, and unfortunately, it's fallen in a way that Fulham have had the majority of their early season games postponed, and so we've only played 4 so far, whereas most teams have played 6 or 7 games this season. So we are playing catch up. Do you think it's tough when you're playing catch up rather than setting the pace?
Well, I guess what's happening is that other teams are being lulled into a bit of a false sense of security or confidence at the top of the league because, they are there. They're being imposters is what I'm trying to say. The problem you're surely going to have is all these games are going to start getting bunched up, and they're potentially going to come in a sequence that will be uncomfortable at some point of the season because they've all been deferred at the start of the season. They're going to have to be made up later on. It's a bit of a crazy system, and I'm sure there's good reasoning behind it to be so flexible, but it seems that it's been used tactically against Fulham, who are completely unstoppable at the moment. So teams have basically elected not to play against them, and a number of teams have done that to Fulham. So, yeah, maybe, I suppose, Fulham have just got to ride it out and keep their powder dry and keep focused. And I guess one benefit of not playing very much is that you're not going to sustain any injuries that you might normally sustain. You're not going to be fatigued from playing a lot of games. But there's probably pent-up frustration, really, that they're training, but getting their games pulled. It's probably quite difficult for them to maintain, just that energy level, I suppose.
Sammy?
Yes.
Well, no. Okay, I'll pose the question to you. Would you prefer to be leading or chasing?
I think I'd prefer to be chasing rather than leading. I think as well, just because it's only one position at the very, very top, and it's very, very tightly contested. It all fell apart last season, and the pressure kind of got to the girls. God bless them. And maybe that's an unfair assessment, but it did kind of feel that way. And I think when you're constantly in a state of striving and actually pushing above you, and then reclaiming from that position, I think the longer you actually stay on top, it actually creates a little bit of like unease, because it's then you just kind of start overthinking the situation, and you start to get quite rattled, especially if you lose like a couple of games. It's a little bit different to if you're constantly kind of building up to something, because by the time you actually get 3/4 away still the season and then you hit your peak, that's better than coming out of the blocks really, really strong and then kind of losing steam over time. But I mean, these are just speculations on my behalf. I don't really fully know, because you have teams like the Invincibles that literally just go the entire season and just crush everybody. So it's really, really difficult to say. But last season we did falter from being on top for so long. So this season I'm hoping for a bit of a different result. But you can only be optimistic because the team's as strong as it is.
Well, but it's a bit different from last season, though, isn't it? Because there wasn't that big disparity of games played at the end of the season. We were behind, and we were basically looking at the leaders, and the only way we were going to get past them as if they faltered. Right, that's tough. So you're literally going punch for punch, toe to toe towards the back end of the season. This is different. Whilst we're not on top, we clearly have so many games in hand, and we're winning comprehensively.
Yeah.
I think we have every reason to know that as soon as this starts evening out, keep our form going, and we're going to rise to the top.
Yeah, definitely. And I personally would prefer to be in the position we're in at the moment, where you're effectively chasing. We know the results that we need to get to the top of the league. And look, Saltdean have had a very good start as well. They're also at a 100% record, but they've made some improvements in the off season. I think we comfortably beat Saltdean last year, and we were up against a couple of very, very good teams last year in Dulwich and Dartford, who both finished above us. But it does feel like we've taken that step this season and really gone to the next level. And it's exciting times. And look, there's a couple of games during the international break. If you do have the opportunity and you're missing your Fulham fix during the next week or so, we do play Maidenhead in the Cup, and then there's a midweek against Sutton as well. The next run of games, I believe, is at Motspur Park, which is great. So please do get down, support Fulham Women's. They've been absolutely roaring this season, and I think we need to get around them as much as possible. Hopefully a few more games at the Cottage as well. So fingers crossed for the Fulham Women's in their upcoming fixtures. Guys, let's round it out there. A great week to talk about Fulham. It's really positive, and the result against City is a really good one, despite the loss. It just feels good at the moment, and I feel calm, which is nice, because we don't feel like that often. There's always pent-up frustration and anger, but it doesn't feel like that right now. It feels positive, and I love that. Shame we're going into an international break where I don't know what to do with myself for a couple of weeks, but looking forward to Fulham getting back out there and a really good competitive run of games where we get to play against Villa and then play against teams that we should be beating and hopefully get some results under our belt. Sammy, any final thoughts before the international break?
No, I mean, look, as much as I love football, I am also really looking forward to having a regular sleeping pattern, because we've just gone on to daylight savings. So the schedule's about to get cooked for me. So I'll appreciate the 2 weeks that I have to just build up and actually just get all the sleep that I can before I actually just do the rest of the season. But other than that, really happy with the result. Just really happy with, just generally speaking, the team at the moment. I mean, this is probably the most optimistic that I've been about the team in such a long time. And yeah, it's only 2 weeks, and then be back into the mix again. And yeah, and you will hear from us, I'm sure, in the time being. And that's what everyone wants. Anyway, who's got a fan on? Like, what is happening right now?
No one does. That's probably your computer overloading.
No. That'd be your mother drying her hair. Don't worry.
Mum made a second entrance. Cool. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Say hi to Mum for me.
Dad, thank you for joining tonight. Any final thoughts before the break?
I do have some final thoughts, and I was wondering why my youngest son was looking like he was from a 70s cop show, but he's taken his sunglasses off now. So
I'll put them back on for a 70s cop show reference. That's great.
yeah, very weird. I'm a little frustrated, Jack, that this international break is on us again. I think it's actually going against us. I really do. I think the general consensus used to be that Marco loves an international break because when we were less competitive, it was an opportunity to breathe and take some heat off. Now it seems to be a momentum killer, so I'm not up for it. As for not knowing what you're going to be doing, Jack, over the next couple of weeks, I think I know someone who you live with who'll find plenty for you to do.
There's always things to do around my house, usually involving pulling out weeds. So I'll pretend that Fulham are playing and just go into the back room and say, yeah, it's Fulham again. I've got to go watch. Take some time off. Guys, thank you. And a big thank you to everyone who's joined in on the YouTube live chat today. It's been great being able to interact with some new people who've joined us. So I really do appreciate all the support. As always, please do continue to share our content, continue to subscribe, share this podcast with other Fulham fans. We really do appreciate all the support. Jump in the Discord, like our posts on Twitter, share them on Twitter as well. We really, like I said, appreciate finding new people, new listeners. A big thank you, as always, to you, Sammy, and to you, Dad. Thank you for joining tonight.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
very
for
much
having us.
me.
It's great.
We will try and get something out during the international break through our tiers at not being able to watch Fulham for the next couple of weeks. Are looking to get some special guests on in the meantime as well, which I'm keeping under wraps, but hopefully we'll have an announcement fairly soon. Big thank you to everyone, and as always, come on you Whites.